encouragement, and I know where to get it. Let's rise. Come on, come on. Rise. Let's go higher, higher, higher. Rise with yourself. Rise with yourself. Howdy! I could have went a little higher, but I didn't want to blow no eardrums out. How y'all's doing today? Oh my God, I'm so good to be here today. And thank you for coming on Rise with Lisette. You know what? It's hello. Do I hear somebody out there?
You hear me?
Yeah, what's going on, man? What's going on?
It's going good. I mean, and listen, it's been a minute. You've been handling some things. I've been having some things go on, but we're here, right? Um,
Right.
and the one thing that we were talking about, not getting too political, because we don't get really political on this show. I am so glad. I have never been glad to be retired from 20 years in the army than this week.
For sure. A whole lot of stuff going on, ain't it?
It's easy to do things when your well-being is not on the line. And for people who always like to say, you know, we talk about soldiers all the time, whether it's in a good light or bad light, and we're all risking our lives, but sometimes we misuse our lives to determine when we're using it for the perceived notion of keeping everyone safe, you
I
know,
absolutely agree.
for betterment. But hey, it's not just an American thing. It's been that way since the beginning of time. People who don't have the means have been convinced to do things for certain nobility. And the one I use the most is Civil War. You know, for whatever's said in the South, you had a bunch of poor white people be convinced by a bunch of rich white people that they were fighting a noble cause because they didn't send their sons to fight for the South. They convinced a bunch of other poor white people to fight for that noble cause. So it's always easy when you can throw somebody else's body, you know, in the line of fire. But you know,
I agree. My heart goes out for all our military personnel out there. That God would watch over and protect them. It's a pretty tough situation right now, and for us in this country, this U.S. citizens as well. It's really tough.
it ain't tough for y'all. Y'all got Netflix and Hulu and YouTube and y'all can go to Starbucks. It's all good. No, I'm just playing. So, but how have you been over the last 3 or 4 weeks?
Oh wow, it's I've been okay. I've had death in my family. My niece, she passed. They're gonna bury her on Friday, but you know what? I've just been more or less just just being close to family.
Hmm?
You
I
know,
don't say past anymore. I stopped using that word.
what do you use?
I say transition now. My uncle has transitioned into another plane of existence, whether that
I
be
agree.
heaven, whether you don't believe and you think our body returns back to the universe's energy, whatever you believe. Um, because past is it's so sorrowful for me. That's why I like place people who don't do funerals. And you know how we do the funeral, then we do the wake. Everybody sits around, and it's that somber moment until we get to eat and all that. Now I love the families that do celebration of life.
That's what we do. That's what we did for my brother's eulogy. We had celebration of life. It's about celebrating, their life, what they accomplished, who they've touched in their life. I don't want any sad. Don't be having no sad funeral if I go. Whenever I
Yeah.
go, don't have a sad funeral. I don't want to be sad at all.
And if I don't like you, I ain't going.
But well, that's you. You don't have to go. How
You know
about
why,
that?
Lisette? No, you know why, Lisette? Because I hate when a piece of crap, and I'm sorry, I'm just going to be honest here. You can't take me any other way. I hate when a piece of crap passes, and then I have to sit at their funeral and hear everybody talk about how wonderful this is, when in their head they're going, this person was a loser.
You know
But
that is so true. I remember when I preached this funeral and the family were fighting against one another. So I came from the song, if you can't be with the one you love, then love the one you're with.
oh, wait.
Yeah.
Wait, that's a crazy song to do at a funeral because
I
all
know,
the
but I was trying to tell them that if instead of you boo-hooing about the one that has gone, you need to look at the people around you and love them. That's what it
yeah,
meant.
but I'm saying that could be a tricky song because somebody might pass, and you come out and you can't be with the one you love the one you're with, and all the mistresses are like, okay, we get the point.
I know it yet. I know it.
You know what that can make you?
What's
That
that?
can make you torn. You know what? Torn. That can make you torn. That could
True.
also tear a family apart. Well, let me get the phrase right. That can make you torn apart. You know what? That's not the. That's. I don't think that's the premise of the movie, but it's a good segue for me to think about our next guest that's coming up, which we have April
Yes.
Mial coming back. I used to call her April Mail all the time.
Mile.
And she says, if you mispronounce my name again and say mail, I'm going to mail you somewhere. And that got
Wow.
me to pronounce it correctly.
I like that because I didn't know if I could pronounce her name. I didn't think I was going to pronounce it right. So thank you for clarifying that for me.
Yeah, April Miles. So she's got Torn Apart coming out. I believe it's a sequel.
Mhm.
She'll fix that for me when she gets on here. And I
Right.
really want to talk to her about the motivations to continue this movie and what's driving her to keep producing. Um, and not to get again going back to what we were talking about in the beginning. In this time where we have so much uncertainty, the one thing you can do is dive into your passions and that be your safe space um, to keep being creative and get your mind off of the circus that is continuously going on around us.
For sure.
So, without further
Absolutely.
ado,
Hmm.
let's bring on, and I got a surprise for you too, Lisette.
Oh, cool.
Bring on April Mial.
Yeah. Hello, April. Mile, how are you doing?
I'm well. How are you doing?
It's fine. You look very pretty today.
Well, that's
See,
what Keone said.
so Lisette, I'm glad. First of all, Lisette, hey, I came on. You happy? Okay.
Thank you.
Um, it's funny because April hopped on here 30 minutes ago to make sure that her stuff was working, and I said, "You look pretty today," and she's like, "You're just saying that. You weren't even here." And now she just said the same thing, April. So see, I'm not just blowing smoke up your skirt.
Absolutely gorgeous.
Well, thank you.
April, it's so good to have you this morning. I
Thank
mean,
you.
wow. I
Yeah,
mean, I know you've been on the show before and we had such a great conversation.
Mhm.
And this morning, we're excited about your new movie, that's
thank
coming
you.
up.
Yeah,
And we definitely got to talk about that. But how have you been doing? Tell us how you've been doing.
I'm good. I cannot complain. I was telling Keone we're breathing today. So it's
Right?
always a good thing when you wake up and you're able to do the things that you enjoy. You're able to thank God for what you do have. You're not dwelling on the things that you don't have. So absolutely, I'm doing really well today.
And this is good. And just so our guests will know a little bit about you, you're she has Rock Groove and Jam. It's a media platform that celebrates the value of female aspiration and experience, and how you connect with professional women who cultivate a new world of possibilities through raw and insightful storytelling. So this is great how you are centered in, and it's mostly about working with community and supporting and producing the communities around you. And I think this is beautiful. Different women seeing it from women from different lens and all this, that, and other. And it's just absolutely inspiring how that your vision is to demonstrate that women can be powerful through an artful venue. That's powerful. So
Thank
that
you.
is just absolutely powerful. And so um, to just take it back a little bit, just a little bit, why have you endeavored in this field? What caused you to concentrate in this area? of your God
Profession. I got you.
profession. All right.
I got you too. Don't you worry about it. Yeah.
Thank you. You don't you see me trembling in my boots? Oh,
She's like,
Family here. We're all friends. It's
she's
all
like,
good. It's all good.
she's, she's like, Keone, leave the read-ins short, please.
thank
Don't
you.
make it so long.
Thank
Go
Um,
ahead, April.
to answer your question, the reason why I wanted to go into this particular field, and I hear an echo. I don't know if you guys hear an echo.
I hear it.
Yeah, I can
Here.
hear it a little bit now.
Okay. When I was a kid, I loved reading. I would go to the bookstore every weekend. My parents, this is when you could buy like those little small paperback books for three for like $20, right? So that tells you how long ago it was. But I used to read that over the weekend. And these were books that took me somewhere in a fantasy somewhere. And from there, I wrote poetry. And then from there, I would, when whoever came to the house, I would be in front of them and I'd start reading, sharing what I did. And my parents would just love it, very encouraging me to do that. And so from there, I started, you know, writing short stories. I said, "How hard can it be to write a script?" And you quickly learn that it's definitely a you have to train your brain to do a little bit different than writing a short story. And so from there, I just continued on it and loved it every step of the way. I would pay money to go to these classes to understand exactly how the writing was, and then being on set, my first project, and then I could see how my words at that point were turned into life, through the actors' action and the way they said things, and it just excited me, and so I wanted to continue, and then I learned how to edit, so that helped me to really develop the stories and really hone in on my craft of writing. So I tell people all the time I'm a writer first, before I'm anything else, because the stories do come from me, and then from there I love putting the whole production together. So kind of got into this step by step, but it definitely started with a passion for writing.
This is good because you know what? I listened to what you were saying, how that, you as a little girl, you like to go and read. And,
Yeah.
me, it was kind of like the opposite. I didn't like that at all. Now, my husband, he writes poetry,
Mhm.
so I told him, I said, baby, you need to get back into it. Yeah. Oh, I thought you said something.
No, I was reading a poem that Clarence put in the chat, but I deleted it. It said, "Roses are red, violets are blue. I told Lisette to marry me, or I'm gonna kick her too." I was like, oh,
Wow, he had to tell that, didn't he? Oh,
yeah.
my goodness.
It's funny, April. You said you're a writer first, but a lot of people don't get to meet writer April, of course, because by the time, like when I met you, it's already let's get casted and let's film. So I'm used to director. I know director, producer April Mial more than I know writer April Mial. And I'm going to tell you, not just showering, I've worked with many people. You're one hell of a director, too.
Oh,
So,
thank you.
Yes.
I
yeah.
appreciate you saying that. Yeah, it's definitely love. When I get on the set, I get excited. We do have some long days, sometimes 12 hours, 14 hours, in one day. And my body is not necessarily equipped for that. But I definitely pop some pills, and we keep it going the next day. But I also would say it helps that when you have really good crew and actors, right? So I'm going to give a shout out to you, Keone. I do call you Melvin, so my hesitation is not that I don't remember your name, but it's I call you Melvin. I think you got another name too, Steven or something, right?
Yeah, well, she's saying everybody's Melva John Walker's my acting name, so that's how she met me, but I don't go by um, that name. And to clarify, everybody out there, because I know we got some younger people who watch this show. When she says "pop some pills," she's talking about ibuprofen. Okay.
Yes, apologize. Aspirin, yes, aspirin for sure. Yeah, no, no drugs there. No drugs.
Ibuprofen. What I wanted to ask you before I throw it back to Lisette is, have you directed anything that you haven't written?
Mm.
Yes,
Because I
yes.
wanted to ask you, what brings you more joy, directing and bringing to life something you wrote, or bringing some? Because it is a special thing when you can bring someone else's vision to life, and they like it. Which one brings you the most joy out of those two?
So for me, I would say I like to create life, period. I would say that when I do my own writing, it definitely is more personable. And it is more that this story came from me. So I have a certain reason why I want to give birth to it. When someone else is paying me to do it, then we do have conversations about it. And so I have to kind of have a conversation with them more of, is this the direction you're looking for? Or is giving them options of what I perceive their script versus just doing it on my own, right? So when I do it myself, I can make those decisions. But if it's someone else, I have to kind of talk through what that looks like. So, but either way, it's fine because again, we're creating a great product at the end. And as long as the person is happy, then I'm happy. So, but I'm always going to be happy for the most part for the projects that I do. So.
This is really good, April, because you're absolutely right, because I'm a songwriter, and I've actually sang some songs for you
Mhm.
that you have written and recorded. So, that's cool, because we did have to have a process of, talking. I had to ask you about how do you want the song to go, and what are you feeling in this song. And so you're absolutely right, so this is really good. Let's talk a little bit more about what inspired you to write this movie, and to, you know what inspired you to do this?
So interestingly enough, in terms of this particular project, we 17 years ago, I went and filmed a full feature. That was my first full feature. I had maybe two or three different shorts prior to that point, and you'll always see me push myself. So I go from two, three, give or take, 15-minute shorts to a full feature that's 3 hours, right? So, or give or take 2.5, 3 hours, something like that. So I definitely do push the limit. One of the inspirations for this, so that was done 17 years ago. People loved the film. It definitely took a little bit longer because there was a learning curve. So we would go back and shoot certain scenes because it just it didn't fit with the story once we started editing, right? So that was a process. So fast forward, about a year ago, I was having a conversation with one of the main actors, and she was like, "Hey, have you ever thought about putting Torn on a platform, streaming?" And I'm thinking, well, it's 17 years old, it looks 17 years old. Would there be a platform that could take it? So uh, I decided at that moment, instead of stepping back per se, I wanted to move forward. And so last August, I went down to Atlanta. She lives in Atlanta, and we started talking. We were sitting at the park and started coming up with some ideas. And then fast forward, there's a script in March, and then we filmed a proof of concept slash trailer in May. So that's how it all kind of came together. And then we decided, hey, you know what? We've got the second part of this, or follow up to Torn. Let's start to think about rounding out this trilogy. So expect a final part of this Torn. So at this point, I'm gonna put a plug in for Torn, which was 17 years ago. Torn Apart is what we're filming in a few months, and then Torn Apart again is the final, and that should be slated for sometime next year.
This movie is just beautiful. It sounds so very dramatic. Torn, just the word torn. I mean, so it sounds like it's going to be gut wrenching, just heartbreaking, dealing with that emotion. Torn. I'm looking forward to it.
There's going to be some drama in there too.
Yes, Lord. I'm looking forward to that. I love drama, so look, look at you.
Men don't like drama. That's what he's saying. He's like, no, 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 don't bring any more drama.
I'm
So
going to tell you what, that is one of those positive stereotypes that ain't true. I see more drama from men I know than women.
really,
Wow.
Yes. We have these social norms that have been embedded in our to mind that something is a certain way. Like men can't communicate. Women can't be friends. And it's like all the women who are friends, who are real friends, are like, "What are you talking about?" you
right,
know, and
right.
all the women who have men that communicate very well, they're like, "Yeah, I don't have that problem." So but it's always a better of mind. But yeah, drama. Hey, we know three things that sell: well, two things. The top two things that sell is drama and sex. And April ain't making a movie about sex, so
Not this
and,
time.
and we know that because I was in a movie of hers with a very beautiful. I played the romantic interest of a very beautiful person. I only got to kiss her once. That was very annoying. I'm
Oh,
like, come on, this must be the girl.
oh.
She's beautiful. Dang it, April, write something in.
Wow.
Well, that's what I was going to tell you too, Kiani. I said I was giving you props as well because you showed up on set knowing your lines. You were very professional, and we were able to get the scene done really quickly, right? So I would say when you were talking about my job as a director and producer, that's one of the things I would say that you people like you and you made my job a lot easier. So and the same with you as Lisette. So I've worked with you as well, and so you know
What?
I know. Well, not on set, not on set, but
Ooh,
the
I was
producing
gonna
or
say,
the.
tell me your secret, because when I work with Lisette, she drives me up a wall. So I'm
Yeah, I
like,
No,
know this thing.
yeah.
Yes.
No, Lisette was awesome. We talked about when she was talking about back and forth the
hmm,
conversations. It was it was maybe I think it was one time that we went through the songs and I pointed out some things. And then the next thing you said, "Oh, I know what you're looking for, April. I know what you're looking for." And so then the next time you sent it to me, it was you had heard me. So I say in both instances, you both created a very very good environment so work could continue and it's
Thank
quality.
you.
So yeah,
it's the patience. So I'm backwards from you two. I call it a bit of my laziness, but I love seeing others' creativity. So anytime that I've produced something, directed something, or needed something edit, which I know April, you would never do this; it'd drive you insane. I am, for some reason, I like giving people the idea and just seeing whatever the heck they come up with. Like any shows that I've had edited by Martin, I'm like, here's the video, here's pictures and animations I want. Do use your creativity. And every time he comes back with something different, I may make a little tweak here or there. And it's the same thing with anything else. I don't know why, but I just love seeing different people's creativity. And that might be because I haven't done a large project yet. I know that can be different, especially when, and it's always my stuff. I haven't directed or produced someone else's um, short or film. So that can be different because, of course, there's a different vision there. But any of my stuff, I've had so many variances because I just love seeing people's creativity.
That's powerful. I think that's awesome. I love being creative. I love, I absolutely agree. I enjoyed working with you, April. It
same here.
gave me another perspective of the writing process, to be able to pick up on someone else's dream and aspirations on a project. I really enjoy that a lot. It just amazes me. What if we had no writers or directors or any of that, if we had none of that, what would we have in this world? It would be so boring without that art form. That's I love that. I love to my sons. I have two sons that are, as a matter of fact, one of them has a birthday today. Zyke's happy birthday, son. It's his
Yeah,
Yeah,
birthday.
happy
she's
You
got
know,
a, she's
and
got
then
a.
I have another son, Ken. He does movies as well, and I love to see them work through the process. It's
That's
really
not the way
birthday. We're
we
supposed
call
to
them.
connect. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
That's not what we say. She has a son named Zyke, and then she has another one. That's how I usually say it.
oh
That's how she usually says it.
I
You know
think you
what?
said to Atlanta. I said I think he lives in Atlanta, right? So we were
yes, his
supposed to
name is
connect.
Ken.
So when I
Yes.
go back down to Atlanta, he and I definitely have to connect. So yeah.
Okay.
One thing that makes you a good director, not saying, a lot of directors are like this, but there's some that rule with an iron fist on set, and there's no changes but the changes they see. You have the ability, like, what you want. And sometimes when people try to change your mind, just like most directors, you're like, no, this is what it's going to be. But then there are those parts where you'll see um, what the actor who's trying to breathe life in the character is trying to do. And I use this in my acting classes when I teach, of an experience I had with you where in the show she has coming out called Circles, there's a character named Jinga. It's the main character in the series.
Mhm.
And her love interest is me is always trying to find time. You know, I'm flying from California to North Carolina at a moment's notice to spend time with her, and I can never get the time. And one of the conversations we were having, we were trying to go somewhere, and she goes, "Well, I'm trying to meet with the girls," and I just muttered. I didn't use words because that wasn't in the lines. I just muttered without making a sound. It's like the girls, and rolled my eyes. And
Yeah.
you said, "Cut." You said, "Why did you do that?" I said, "Why did I do what? Why did you just mutter under your breath and roll your eyes?" I said, "Because I feel like my character at this point, he's overly annoyed with hearing about the girls. So even though the lines aren't there, I felt like he should have reacted that way." And you said, "All right, we're putting that in there." And
That's
so
good.
I tell that to people out there that are aspiring to be actors. Don't be afraid to understand the character you're trying to portray, because sometimes your thought um, is what the director or the writer needs, and they go, "You know what, I didn't think about that." And so that's what I appreciated out of you. If somebody really had an idea of what a character might say, even though you wrote the words, or might react, you would like openly listen to it and
I
then
try.
make it.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
want to make it authentic, right? So,
Mhm.
to your point, I've asked characters, what do you think that you would be able to do even before we start to film, right? So, part of that is just making sure that when someone else sees that character and that reaction is genuine, okay, I can relate to that person. Right? Isn't that kind of what the whole point of doing the movies are? It's not just to have something out there that people think is far fetched. And once people feel that they can't relate to you or that is out there and unrelatable, then they'll tune out. And so I think when you going back to torn apart, it is emotional, but it's also inspiring as well, right? So I think that the trailer, once it comes out, you'll see that it is very emotionally driven. Even when I was selecting the right editor for this, I selected a female. No disrespect to men, but I wanted a female who could feel the words, who could feel the scenes. And so by us working together, we were able to tag team and collectively present one scene that I've been showing to people that actually women are crying, as a result of it. Or men will say, "Oh, that's true. That's true. That's true about us," that kind of thing. So that makes me feel good when I have a product that people or a project that people can go, "I like that. I do like that," and I want to see more of that. So, yeah.
What, do you ever have a scene where someone has to supposed to be crying and they can't seem to cry? What do you do with
So I think it's happened to me maybe a couple of times. What we'll do is we revisit that. When sometimes people can cry so much they can't cry anymore, or they just don't have it in them right then. So sometimes I'll take a breath, and I will say, "Let's walk around the block. Start thinking of something sad. Give them a moment to be able to get there." So because I don't want to force it. If they can't do it, they can't do it, and people will know. Because I don't know if most people know this, but on set. The naked eye is what it is, right? So if I looked at a scene without a monitor, like right now we're looking at a monitor here, I can detect what, people's something beyond their eyes, what that they're portraying. They may say I'm happy, but their eyes tell me something different, right? And I can detect that in a monitor. But in
Wow.
the naked eye, I can't, right? So that's the difference. And so that's why on set you'll see me as a director look through that lens versus everybody else looking at it, for what it is in the scene.
And that's a good point of the difference of a director. For some reason, I'm an acting coach. It's easier for me through the naked eye, because the thing that April's talking about, for those who don't know, is the inner monologue. That's being able to tell a story with your eyes. And one of the greatest at it is Denzel Washington. He will tell a story with his eyeballs. And one of the things with crying that a lot of people fail to realize is they're trying so hard to produce tears, and they're not so much concentrating on their tone and
Wow.
their facial expression, which is helps them more tremendously. Like, you can be a convincing scene that you're sad and near an abundance of tears just by the crackle in your voice, the tone of your voice,
Yeah.
and not just let me push out some tears. It don't work that way. So that's very important and a great observation by you. Uh, those monitors helps a lot. Even from being an acting coach, when I started directing, I wasn't looking at the monitor, and so I was missing some things. And then the cameraman said, "Hey, hey," he would constantly tap me and go, "You want to look through this thing?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, oh they're not even in the shot." He's like, "Yeah, your eyes can see more than the monitor, Keone." I
Yeah.
was like,
Yeah.
"Oh,
You know, this is so good because I know that Keone, he's my acting coach as well. He's my acting coach, and so I've learned a lot, you know, from him. And even when we had the movie, my son Zaki wrote and directed the movie "Lord Do It for Me," and I'm starring in the movie. And I remember some of the things he taught me in the movie. And it when I, you know, it was about someone that was um, selling drugs out on the street, and I can remember of a family member that I've dealt with that through a family member. It was not really acting for me. I was just being, you know, being in that zone in that spot, you know, where I've been so many times. You know, so this is great. I see somebody over there said something about I know Ken said, let's go. That's my son about getting up with him in Atlanta. But Joey, was it
well,
Joel
I'm gonna
Lemon?
read that. I just want to say this real quick. Here's the problem, April.
Hmm.
I was Lisette's acting coach, and she can act. She was my singing coach, and I can't sing. So
It wasn't a good trade off. Is that what you're
We're
saying?
gonna get some more classes
I don't know. You got the raw end of the deal. Um, Joe Lemon says, and I hope I said the name right. G. Joey Lemon says, does Miss Mile direct musicals? Ooh, that would be interesting.
in.
She hasn't.
So, Joey, I have not directed. However, I did produce some. It wasn't a musical per se, but it was a stage play with music. So I it was called Butterfly Wings, and this was years ago. It was by someone else who wrote it, but I ended up getting writing credits as well as another writer friend of mine to pull our resources, our writing resources together to be able to elevate the play from where it was originally. So no, I have not. I have a cousin who does that. You know that I'm gonna let him stay in his lane, but I like the dramatic more so than the musicals. Although I do love musicals, I will go to musicals and the theater. I love the theater, but I like to stay in my lane for film. But yeah, but thank you. It was a good question.
I mean, I love being in musicals. I loved it myself. You know, Ragtime, that was
Mhm.
pretty cool. I really enjoyed that. You know, it was going to be awesome. You know, I just anyway. But you know what? This is so good. I just kind of like want you to explain to me, please, what is the message or the theme of this movie? Even the more, could you dig into that a little bit more about what's the message and the theme of this wonderful movie, Torn Apart?
All right, thank you for that. So I get excited every time I talk about it because it was us sitting in a park and just talking, right? It was my friend and I and just talking. And but just to tell you about Torn Apart, I would have to go back just slightly to tell you about Torn. And Torn was about a single mother who instilled in her African American son that he could pursue any dream that he wanted to pursue. And she would see him emulate a newscaster. It was a white guy named Buddy Ames, and he would emulate him, watch him on television all the time. And his mother said, "You know what? You emulate him all the time. You know, without at home. Why don't you kind of pursue this as a career?" And her son had never thought about it, but then he realizes that eventually this is something he could do. But within that story, that was the main theme of the story. But then it had to expand, and part of that expansion was we show that she was a single mother who her husband is in jail for a crime we later find out that he did not commit. But she moves on with her life with another guy named Russell. And so Russell is a entrepreneur. A businessman. He's opened up doors that she never could foresee for herself. So then her husband comes back from jail, and here she's engaged to Russell. So the dynamic of who she going to choose at this point is a contest of people trying to vie for her love. Those two men. Well, torn apart comes, and she does choose as a man, right? So we will say that. Torn apart is taking up from that movie 10 years later when she's now faced with another dynamic. So Russell, who is her ex fiance businessman, she goes into business with him in a salon where her husband finds out that they actually are in business together, and he tells her that she needs to cease that relationship. Now, what I wanted to do in exploring this particular movie was how women or people are different characters based upon who they're in a relationship with, right? So with Russell, she feels secure and protected because he's a businessman who knows what he wants, and he's very successful. She learns from him. For her husband, Bernard is, out of jail. He's trying to figure out his life, and moved on without him, and now he's trying to pick up and catch up. So she feels more motherly with him. So that's what I wanted women to kind of look at this film and say, oh, you've got two different men. You don't have to choose who needs to be in your life. Why not have both? Women are always adjusting to what a man wants. Why can't these two men adjust of being in her life the way she wants them to be? So that's kind of like what this movie explores. And so that's why I'm excited. I know that Keone's got his head shaking like Lord have mercy, but no disrespect to men,
I
but
don't.
like I wanted to explore it.
You didn't say anything. I mean, you didn't say anything out of line. I've seen your shows and movies that are centric about women and maybe have some men that I may or may not like, but you're not one that goes out to destroy
Right.
uh, the thought of men or destroy the behavior of men. You just point out certain things, and then you always have men. I mean, in circles, you have your men. What's his name, Roy? Move around Roy or whatever his nickname is. What's his name?
Now you're gonna put me on the spot. I don't remember his. It was a irregular Roy. It was regular Roy. I just thought about it.
People like
Regular
a
Roy.
regular Roy, and then I'm playing Dorian, who's a great guy. So it's not like you make it. It's not like that funny thing I see on Family Guy. It goes Family Guy. It goes Lifetime television for women who hate men. Lifetime is just terrible, you know. So you don't go out and do that. So I don't find um, that hard, and that's a very good premise of a movie because that's a thing that isn't asked. And when the reason I was shaking my head because when you were saying that, I always remember that dumb saying, "You can't have your cake and eat it too." And I always hate that saying. It's like, what do you mean? What was the purpose of getting the cake if I
Right.
wasn't going to eat it?
If you weren't gonna eat it, yeah. And that's what I think that women, when I was speaking to women before, they would say that. They're saying, if I'm married to this guy, he only wants me to be with him. It's like, no, but then that's not making you a well-rounded person, right? So that's kind of like what we can explore. Even the main actress, we were doing the table read. She was like, well, she sounds like a hoochie to me. And I'm like, no, 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 no. We're driven
Oh
by the storyline.
Lord!
Yeah, we're driven by the storyline. This is a viable storyline that women may face, and then women that I've talked to say, yes, I've got a friend who is this. Doesn't mean that we're romantically involved, but they help me to do X or they help me to do Y, but I still love my husband, right? So it's possible at this point.
I
It's
mean,
it's possible and crazy at the same time to even think of that notion. That's powerful. I mean, it's
I
mhm.
oh, go ahead. Let's say I didn't mean
No,
to
go
cut you
ahead.
off. No, 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 no. You go ahead.
It's just, I mean, it just lets us know that we are much more complex than what we think
Sure.
as a human being. There's a lot going on there. Whether we want to, be truthful about it or not. That you can, what is it? My mind's on you, but my body's with you, but my mind's on the other side of town. You ever heard that song?
Sure.
And that
No,
can be
but
so
it's
true.
true. Yeah,
It's
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 true.
it's true. It's just that wrestle, that someone may go through, but however, there's got to be some kind of resolve. You got to make up your mind,
Oh,
which
do
way you're
you?
going to go with it. You can't be
Well,
bow legged.
I think that's the problem. Do you? The thing I was going to say I'm sorry for interrupting you is when we say the complexity, sometimes I sit back and stuff, I'm like, we made this a lot harder than it needed to be. Sometimes the complexity is us. You're making the situation more complex, you know. And that's what I think the problem is sometimes. And a lot of times when things are complex, it's because people are thinking of what they would do in a
Exactly.
situation
That's where I was
and not
going.
paying
Yes. Yes.
attention to
Yeah.
what you would do. Like if I was married to April and she was a business partner with her ex-husband, I know April, there's no problem with that. But
Right.
if I was a person that
Yes.
would definitely be doing something on the side with my
Right.
ex-wife as a business partner, now I'm sitting here thinking, well, what is she doing?
That's a
Right.
So
good point.
that's not an April problem. That's a me
That's a
problem.
you problem.
Exactly. Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. Yeah.
That's a
And that's
good.
why I think most men have an issue because they
Mhm,
will probably cheat, right?
mhm.
So, and then that's a general statement. I'm not saying all men, but that's where
No,
I
you didn't say most. I will catch you there. You
you
didn't say
said that. I didn't say it, but I was trying to be nice. I was trying to be nice. But yeah, but I think that
most.
to your point, Keone, when you trust that person, understand that person, know that person, then that's what you should be looking at versus what I would always do, right? So, yeah. But I
Mhm,
think she can do both. I think she can have both because again, this is part of her growth. This is part of understanding what love is. And when I say again that women have conformed, you see some women getting in a relationship and they get smaller and smaller and smaller based upon how that man wants that relationship to look like. What I want what I want these two men and Juanita's life to do is understand that they're all partners in some capacity, right? And partnership is 50-50 or giving and taking, that kind of thing, compromising, that kind of thing. So it's not always it's not always one-sided where I told you not to do something and then that's the end of it. That's where the torn part. One of the scenes you'll see when he says, as your husband, no man should come between us. But
mhm,
to your point, Kiani, it's only complex because we make it complex. It should have been maybe a conversation where they all sat down and there might have been a misunderstanding. Who knows? I don't know. Right? You'd have
mhm,
to find that in the script. But outside of that is we don't communicate. We have these perceptions of who we are and what we think who you are instead of really understanding each other. And again, that's what I want to explore, you know. So everything I'm doing is driven by the storyline, not
mhm.
necessarily always just about the characters, you know, whether we
Now,
like them or not like
now,
them.
to be fair, movie aside, and we'll talk about because I'll be doing this a service being the only male representative here. I don't want to hate mail like you ain't because Um, now I'm going to say it's always lopsided, but I have experienced that also on the other hand, where I have a lot of male friends. They get married or they start dating someone, and it's like, what the heck has happened to you? She doesn't want me to do this. Very short. We used to play football every Sunday when I lived in Miami, and there was one guy. He disappeared for like 2 months. It was a really good. Oh, and that's why we were missing him. He was really good. So
Yeah.
one day he just randomly showed back up. We're like, where have you been? And before he could finish, his wife just cut him out. Oh, I just didn't want him to come out. I was like, what, y'all were going to church or something? No. Like doing something?
Yeah.
No. I was like,
Wow.
what were you doing? We were just sitting in the house. I was like, and my wife just interrupted, was like, well, why? Well,
Yeah.
he was coming here so much. She's like, would you rather him go to the strip club on a Saturday night?
Yeah,
He's
that's true.
playing
Yeah.
football. He's exercising. Like, what is the control with you? And this
Yeah.
is my wife
This is
telling her that.
this
Yeah.
is so good, Keone, because
You
just
know.
like my husband, he loves to play golf. I don't care if he go plays golf and well, he's not gonna be with you and go have fun. Go have fun with you guys.
Right.
Go have fun because I trust him. I trust him. But it also reminds me here that maybe in the film, sometimes maybe we move on too quickly, too suddenly before we can consider our own feelings. And instead of us being healed from that, we want to bring all that stuff into another relationship, knowing that we still got feelings for the man. So now you bring confusion. It's just you need to wait sometimes.
I have a question for both of you because it was two hypotheticals that were asked. One's a fun one that's been going around social media, and one's an old one from time. So, if you're And I know it's hard to give this because there's so many parameters that come into play. But I was asked this question a couple months ago. It was like, if you're married to someone and they're going to jail for 15 years, do you wait? I said, oof. And they said, what do you mean, oof? You're married. I said, yeah, 15 years is a long time. I said, I'll do this. Even if my wife wanted to stay with me, I would tell her to go. I'm not having her wait for me for 15. That's 50. If she's 30 years old, she's 45 now when I get out. And who knows what my temperament is or where my head is when we get out. She's missed 15 years of her life. And people say, well, that's kind of selfish. What if she wants to stay? And I'm like, I wouldn't want her to. I would probably personally try to find a way, even if I'm lying, to push her away.
That's interesting.
And somebody told me, you're crazy. Why would
I think it depends.
you?
Like sometimes you can love someone so much you want to stand by them, and then again, it depends on what kind of relationship you have, right? So, or what your needs are. So me, I don't know. Maybe give me a year and then I'll make a decision. I don't know, but it depends on what the crime is. There's a
Hypothetical
lot of
doesn't need to
factors,
endure.
right?
The
I think
hypothetical.
it's love that of the person going in jail saying, "Well, you don't have to wait on me." But I think it's also love when the person on the other side says, "I will." You know,
Mhm. Yeah. And I think that's it because she said I will, and I'm like, no, you won't. I'm sorry, I'm gonna make that decision for you. Go live your life, girl. And then here's a hypothetical jail question. It has nothing to do with the movie or anything else. It's just a question I wanted to ask you guys. I got asked this yesterday. Would you have to do one of these two? Would you rather spend a year in jail or 1 week in jail for the rest of your life? Which one? You have to do one of those.
Give me 1 year.
1 year? Okay. And
one
there's a
year.
reason. So I want to hear everybody's answer, and then the reason after we get everybody's answer, because the answers are more interesting than the reasons are always more interesting. What do you say, Lisette?
1 year.
Yeah, and I'm a person that says 1 week, so this is going to be interesting. Okay, April, why give you the 1 year instead of 1 week a month, 1 week a year for the rest of your life?
So as I get so looking at the rest of my life, I don't know how long I will last, right? So I know that anything negative, I try to get it in, get it out, right? I'm always going to be a very positive person for the most part. If I get too much negativity, then it starts to affect my personality. So let's do a year and be done with it. That way I have a goal, right? And I'm always goal driven. So that's kind of like how I would be able to survive. And then once I was out, then I would appreciate the fact that I'm out and probably work even harder to get things done. You know, so that's why I say 1 year.
What do you say? Why you say, Lisette?
I would also say 1 year as well because, I don't want to carry this on. Just get it over with. Let's just get it done and move on. That's what I say.
And I'm doing 1 week. I'm doing 1 week a year for the rest of my life. I, as a person who's been deployed for 18 months, a year is a very long time to be in jail. I know for a week, every year, I know my week. I can get mentally prepared for it. I can go do my little week. Not saying little week like it's nothing, and then get the heck out.
Mm.
Because there are people who get some sentences where they come to jail on weekends. It's crazy. Yeah, I am definitely a 1 week. I don't know if I can go from 365 days straight. So I'm definitely doing prepare myself mentally for my week, go in, do it, and get the heck home. But no answer is the wrong answer. They just like to hear the interesting reasons to why. So the last two things Clarence said before we got about 10 minutes. Clarence said, I would not ask her to wait 15 years. She can decide. And hey, listen, I'm doing that thing that may sound bad. I'm making a decision for her as a man, which is something we talked about not doing.
We just talked
I'm
about,
telling
right?
her, yeah, I'm
I'm
telling
still
her,
gonna wait.
yeah, I'm telling her you need to get the H on. Um, and there's a personal reason to that. I got married in 2007. Me and my wife were going through issues in 2012, not issues in the marriage. I was dealing with PTSD. I was dealing with a bunch of, army stuff, PTSD, depression, and leading her through that. But we weren't having an issue. Like I wasn't putting it on her. I was just dealing with it, um, a lot of things mentally. And so we separated in 2012. And when we separated, a couple months went by, and I just didn't see an end to me in my issues at the moment. So we separated. We didn't divorce, but we separated. Well, in 2014, she met her now husband in 2014, 2 years later. And we were going to do a divorce, but I realized her insurance was terrible and his insurance was terrible. And
Gosh,
so I said, when one of you gets better insurance, I'll give her a divorce because I'm in the military and she has great insurance right now. So when one of you gets better insurance, then we'll get a divorce. Okay. Well, I didn't know it was going to take till 2023
Oh my God.
for
and
somebody
look
to
at the way the health insurance is going now. You might need to put her back
get.
on. You know,
I'm serious.
Well, here's the problem. So 2020, 2012 all the way to 2023. So 11 years later, I'm still paying insurance, which is not a complaint. I made that decision, but I told her to move on. Even though she didn't want to, I told her to move on. And I wasn't in jail. That was just 2 years of me dealing with stuff. And so she finally got promoted and got great insurance. We put in a divorce. A month after the divorce was finalized, she got laid off.
oh man.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
Oh, I was like, you can't
Wow.
win.
The world. That's crazy.
Well,
Oh,
hopefully her husband can take care of her. You know.
oh yeah, they're doing fine.
Yeah.
It was so funny. I had her put me on speakerphone. He came home one day, and she's like, I'm not gonna say the name. She's like, Keone has a letter for you. It's like, a letter for me. Why would he have a letter for me? And he opened it. It was the divorce paperwork, and he started screaming. Now he was happy. He ready to get married. What was also sad is because of us living in two different states, we had to do it over Zoom, and every couple there was just so many. There were like 40 couples on the Zoom, and they all hated us because me and her were laughing and giggling and telling jokes back and forth, and they just looked at us like, "Will you get these two pleasant people the hell out of here?"
We're on the divorce thing. You know, everybody should be mad with each other. Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, experiences, and so that's why I think my answer earlier about the 15 years, I I know from being 20 years in the army how fast life goes. I know how waiting for somebody to come back from 18 months of being gone goes. And I just wouldn't want to put that on anybody, no matter how much they love me. That's just me personally. I'm not trying to convince anybody to change.
But you can't make them. I mean, maybe this is what happened to that lady in the movie. Perhaps,
Well,
maybe
did you
somebody
say I
told her,
can
"Well,
make
you need to
them go
go
away?
on. You need to go
Well,
on with your
Her
life."
son did. No, her son did.
yeah, I can make them. Mhm. I'm not going to answer her calls. I'm not going to return her letters. And when she come to visit me, I'm not coming out. Eventually, you're going to get tired of that and you ain't coming no more.
That's mean.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, it's mean, but you know what? When she finds the next love of her life and is happily married and going on vacations and maybe having a kid, she'll be thankful.
well, when you get out, don't come looking for it. Then if you're
That
gonna do all that,
not going to do that. That was the whole point of telling her to go on. And you have to also realize if you spend 15 years in prison, there's no way I'm coming back the same person
That's right.
who
And that's
left.
what we wanted to explore too,
Yeah,
right?
I
So,
may not be the same person she fell in love with. Just
right,
like when my wife married me after 20 years in the army, I wasn't the person she married.
right.
I can understand that.
Yeah, I ain't that same person. I want to be, but I'm not. It's impossible.
And that's what the character Bernard says. You know, she's like, he thought they were going to just pick up where they left off. She's like, wait a minute, my life moved on. It might have been a standstill for you. So that's why I said he had to catch up, right? He had to find the innate quality within him to be able to get to her level, right? So yeah,
Mm.
so it's important.
You know what's the messed up part for him, April? It's one thing to go to jail for 10 years for something you did, but to go to jail for 10 years and you were innocent, and now it feels like you're still being punished for something you didn't do because
That's
number one,
sad.
your life's been taken for 10 years, the woman you loved has moved on, and none of it's really your fault.
Wow.
And they're torn apart in the scene that you'll see in the trailer.
Mhm.
He says, remember before I was talking about how she looks at him, their relationship more like she's the mother, he's the son. She's trying to make up for where he lacks, versus the other guy where she feels secure because he is a businessman, successful. So in a scene that you'll see in the trailer, he looks at his wife before he walks out the door and he says, "Look, why do you keep putting limitations on me?" And the reason why that's key is because we as people do it to people, to others, all the time without even recognizing it. I've had people say, "Why don't you wait until this, or why don't you wait until that?" And I'm like, "Well, your fear is not going to be my fear." So that's why I put that line in there. Why are you putting limitations on me? Well, the characters do it, but that's what I want to say to people. Why do you put limitations on me, or why do you allow other people to put limitations? Because to your point, Kiani, people are going to exert to others what they feel about themselves. And that's one of the things that we want to start challenging people and saying, "No, no, no, no. I want to do my life. Let me do it the way I do. As long as I don't infringe on you or step on your toes negatively, then respect the fact that this is what I want." When you If you're in the same situation and you want something different, then you can want something different.
April, it sometimes it takes a lifetime for someone to get right to that point right there. Well, I'm gonna do it. I did it my way. I'm gonna do it the way I want to do it.
Right.
Sometimes it takes a lifetime to get there. I
Yep.
mean, it doesn't always take a. It's not an overnight thing.
It's true. It
It's
took me a
amazing.
long time to get here. Yeah, it did. And people might not like you because you had that stance, right? But you have to stay strong, and realize you only have one life. I tell people all the time,
Well,
uh,
I'm not a Hindu.
people die all the time in our lives, right? Look at you, Lisette. You just had some death in your family,
Yes.
right after each other. I've had death within the year, and getting ready to experience some more. So when I say that we only have one life, I truly mean that.
Mm.
And it is how you move forward is what makes you happy. You might be doing it by yourself, or you have good friends like Lisette and Keone that kind of help push you along.
No,
You are going to have some negativity,
you're
but you got
giving me way too much credit.
Oh,
I love you. I love you,
Um,
Melvin.
I have
love you
seen some evolution in your writing in reference to men because you may, I don't know if I'm not going to say you may not notice, but I've seen some of your earlier work. I've seen some of your mid work, not mid in terms of level, throughout the middle of your career, and I've seen things that you've done later, and the depiction of the men that you're trying to point out that aren't doing things the right way, or that are the antithesis in the movies, has evolved, because I can see the younger April, and I can see the nuance changing as the movies have progressed. So that's also pretty cool. But let's talk about, so you've got October, is when you're trying to start really kicking in to the new movie, and you have a fundraiser for that. Kind of give us some insight on that and how people can support um, Torn Apart 2, and some of the perks that they can get for supporting Torn Apart.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. So, with anything, it's expensive to do films. And so I have used some of my money to be able to get the trailer done, but I definitely need money to be able to complete the film. It was funny when you see the poster, you only see half the faces, and so my joke with that is. I had enough money for half the faces, but once we get the money for the full feature, you will be able to see the faces, right? So that's kind of like my joke at this point. And the fundraiser are is 100 for the first tier. You get either a signed poster, which is what you see, or you'll get a signed trailer script, whichever you decide. Tier two is 150. And from there, you get either one of those two choices plus a book. I've written a book called 401 Season. And that's another challenge. A woman, she's 35 years old. She's gotten divorced, three kids, and she decides to go into the WNBA. So that book is already out, and that's book one of seven. And then the third tier is 250, where you get a choice of those. You get those two things, plus you get associate credit on the film itself. So we are in, and so if you go to the Rock Groove and Jam website, you should be able to select for that. And we would definitely appreciate that, especially if you go for the credit, right? So because it definitely takes a community. We are the community. A lot of times people think it's just someone who needs a meal, but sometimes as a person going after a dream as well. So if you're able to participate in the crowdfunding, we would love it. And then we'll have a launch party in October, and to be able to recognize who's giving credit, who's giving money, and just to be able to celebrate at that point, because we are going to get the movie finished. So that's it. But yeah, go to the site for more information, rockgrooveandjam.com.
Awesome. Absolutely awesome. I want to thank you, April, for coming on the show this morning, and Keone, and all the staff, as well as all the participants out there on YouTube land. As you know, we thank you so very much for tuning in and listening to the show today. God is so good. I pray that you have a great day. Today I pray that you really be blessed, and I pray that the Lord watches over our country, and also please be on the alert for torn
Turn apart,
Apart.
off.
Torn apart.
turn apart.
Torn.
Torn apart.
All right. Thank
Thank you for having me, guys. I really appreciate
you.
it.
All right. April, hang tight. I have a question to ask you. Everybody out there, have a great week.
Thank you.